Welcome to this month's edition of Pulp Nonfiction, the paper and packaging podcast. I'm Greg Johnson with Sustana Fiber, and as always, I'm happy to be joined by my co-host, Dr. Marta Pazos.
Hi, Greg.
So, Marta, I'm not sure if one of your New Year's resolutions of 2023 is to clean out your closet of some of those clothes that you never seem to wear and recycle them, but that's why we couldn't be more excited to have as our guest today Katie Brill, a passionate environmentalist and the Senior VP of Public Relations and Communications at Junk Kouture in Dublin, Ireland, here with us today. Katie will share how her unique organization is empowering school children around the world by developing their interest in fashion and sustainability through designing clothes out of recycled materials, including paper, to better our environment. Katie, it's great to see you again, and thank you for visiting with us today.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me on the Pulp Nonfiction podcast, Greg. It's honestly so nice to be here, seeing you again, and also with you, Marta. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for being here.
Fantastic. Well, Katie, why don't we start off if you could tell our audience just a little bit about Junk Kouture and its mission of nurturing students' creativity and how you upcycle everything from paper to pop cans into recycled clothing for competitions.
Absolutely, Greg. So I suppose let's get started right from the beginning and what Junk Kouture is. So it is a platform for youth creative expression that offers a fashion competition, like you said, but also an educational program that challenges students in schools aged 13 to 18 years. And what we challenge them to do is to create wearable fashion out of nothing but 100% recycled materials before they then take to global stages, showcasing their sustainable designs and their backstories to the world. So we have been running in Ireland now for 12 years, and in 2021 we decided to launch globally in 5 new markets. And it has been an amazing period of time, launching into the UK, the US as well, France, Italy, the UAE, and it was just at the beginning of January, on January 11th, we were in Abu Dhabi for our first ever world final of Junk Kouture, where we had 10 top design teams from each of the markets, their teachers and also supporters, who came across from these markets with their designs to take to the stage of the Etihad Arena on Yas Island. And it really was a true celebration of creativity, sustainability, youth voices, culture and talent as well, to throw them in there. And we crowned the first ever World Designer of the Year, which was just an incredible experience. And we look forward to continuing our mission. And I suppose, speaking of our mission and speaking of creativity and sustainability, it really boils down to enriching and empowering the lives of young people through both creativity and also sustainability, because we target 6 of the 17 United Nations SDG goals. And really what we want to achieve is to highlight the fact to youth that what we view as junk can always be recycled into useful and impactful ways. And through that, Greg, we actually create the circular engineers of tomorrow. And that's what we call these young people, because they are our future leaders and our future change makers. And I suppose we know that the youth can often feel helpless in the face of climate change. And at Junk Kouture, we really want to give them the platform to not only use their voice, but to showcase their creative solutions to climate change. And each year, we're absolutely blown away by the innovation and incorporation of STEAM into not only just their thought processes, but the creation of their designs. And what always blows me away is that these are youth that are creating these. They are using their innovation, their innate creativity that they all have, and we just use fashion as the medium to tackle sustainability.
So, well, Katie, I gotta tell you that, and Greg mentions many times to many of our guests that I am an avid runner. I am more of an avid fashionista. I love fashion. I was one of those that was devouring Project Runway. But tell us, how do you score these contests? These pieces, right? How do you possibly judge this?
Yeah, and really good question, Marta, because you see everything and anything. There's no rules at Junk Kouture. Students can create a ball gown dress, something that's very costume like Cirque du Soleil, or, something that's very Met Gala inspired. It could be space inspired. So we see everything. So when you try to, I suppose, bottle them all into one category, to judge it in one category, you can't. So when it comes to the judging, we have a diverse range of judges across all our markets, in Junk Kouture. So be it in France, you have industry experts there, in London, the US, and so on. And each judge looks for different things, but overall we have a set number of, I suppose, tick boxes, and that's where it comes down to the innovation, so their choice of materials. And if it is something as simple as the use of paper or the use of plastic, what is the innovation? What are the techniques the students are showing with that use of a simple material that we have in abundance? So what techniques are they showing? How do they collect them? Do they raise awareness to their community, going out to local businesses, collecting the materials? Do they put out collection boxes around their school? Similar to that as well, it's the wearability of it as well. That's another point that we'd be looking at. Very difficult when you are using unconventional materials in Junk Kouture to stay away from glue. Getting kids to think about melting, sewing, weaving, all these different things. And none of these students have a background in fashion design, by the way. This is just your ordinary art classrooms, engineering classrooms, home economics classrooms, or extracurricular activities that they're running. And I would say 95% of these students have had no interest before in fashion design. They like fashion, like wearing fashion. We all wear fashion. It's a form of expression, but a lot of them don't have actual training in fashion design. So it's getting them to think outside the box, and that's a big thing the judges look for as well. And then lastly as well is definitely the stories behind the creations. So these students are incredibly inspiring, their own personal stories first and foremost, but then the stories they tell through their Junk Kouture designs. And that's probably, personally, for me, my favorite, one of my favorite things that comes from Junk Kouture is the stories, be it habitat loss, plastic pollution, the climate industry, the voices of youth in the environmental movement. And then that's what inspires them to choose their materials. And I love what comes from that. And that's something that the judges look for. Does the choice of materials and the silhouette of the garment go with the story they're trying to tell? And I think that's an amazing form of education for the students, because they're challenged to think of the story and not just the material and the designing aspect. It's a whole 360.
What's it like organizing these high profile events, and what's been the public's response to Junk Kouture?
They can be quite stressful at times when you're coordinating events and delicate garments, and students and schools and all the logistics that go with that. But they always are a success, and it comes down to one thing, and that really is our duty of care to ensure that these students are having an incredible experience, getting to showcase their hard work and talents that they put into their sustainable designs over several months, because it is a year-round program across the academic year. And it's honestly the most rewarding thing for us after an event, be it, taking the kids to Cannes Film Festival to show off their design if we've been invited there, or the MBA game. And then we have obviously our yearly events where the students get to show their designs at their city finals. And, we hear things like, I was on the same arena same stage as Beyonce. And it's just things like that. And seeing what these events mean to them. Apologies.
There's a lot of us out there that would love to start a program like this. And you've mentioned that there is no cost to the students. How are you funded?
And so Junk Kouture, although there's no cost involved for the students, that's the number one most important thing to us, is that it's an inclusive community and there is no barriers to entry for young people, be it from whatever background, whatever country they're from. And that's what's really important, because we want to equip these students with the green skills that they need. And for funding Junk Kouture at the moment, we are funded in several different ways, and it's a lot through sponsorship and partnerships with, support with governing bodies in each of the markets as well, and with bigger partnerships. Like, for example, we're now working with Deloitte across several youth sustainability initiatives. They have been an incredible partner of ours this year. I've been lucky enough to work with them, and they have come on to help with our master classes, for example. So it's helping with the funding of our resources that we are able to offer to our classrooms across the world. And that's what's really important.
Do you ever think maybe down the road there might be some commercialization of some of your students' creations, where we could someday maybe see some of Junk Couture's apparel in Harrods department store or in Macy's or Target here in North America?
Greg, that would be the dream, honestly. And it was, we were in London recently at the Brand Licensing Europe event to meet students perform on the stage there alongside Products of Change and the United Nations. And it was a beautiful event that we were involved in. And it was one of the students that myself and my colleague were looking at, and she had these stunning embellished gloves that she'd created out of like fruit and vegetable netting and all old costume jewelry that was weaved in throughout it, and they were stunning. And I was like, that is something that people would wear now. Look at the Christmas holidays, what people wear with their own netting tights with the little jewels on it. They're wearing all these diamante tops. I was like, this is a product that could be sold that people would wear, and she created that. And absolutely, Greg, down the line, that is definitely where we want to go with Junk Kouture, is nurturing these students who actually have a real passion for fashion, I suppose, and then developing a section of their garment, be it that it's a whole piece, or it might be a headpiece, an accessory, a pair of shoes, or a top that's been inspired by their Junk Kouture design. Absolutely, that is the way forward for us.
Right?
You yourself actually won Junk Couture's Glamour Award when you were in high school in Ireland. And how did that experience help you? How does that help you in your role now, Katie, in terms of Junk Couture?
Yeah, so that was, gosh, like 10 years ago now. I was 16. It's a crazy long time ago now. When I think about it, I'm still involved with Junk Kouture. And, it's just the most amazing experience for me. And when I won the Glamour Award, I don't think anyone in Junk Kouture, and a lot of the bosses and, in Junk Kouture and my colleagues don't believe that the students go in and don't think about the prizes, but genuinely you don't. You just want to be there with your peers, show off your creation, all your hard work. And if you get a prize, it's a bonus. And that night when I got awarded with my teammates the Glamour Award, and we went to London from Ireland, which I know is only an hour flight, but at the time it was huge for us in school to go to London and be on, it was the green carpet at the time for the film The Hobbit, and Princess Kate and Prince William were there, Ian McKellen, and I was there in an orange peel dress, dried out orange peels, and I was just rocking it. And for me, that experience was just surreal. I don't think I knew what to expect until I arrived that day. And when I think back and what it's done for me now and my role in the organization, I've been with Junk Kouture for just over 3 years. I went off to university and came back, but always stayed involved in some capacity with workshops and so on. But when I look back and ask myself, what did that do? It was huge for my confidence, absolutely huge. And it was huge for my own self belief. And yeah, I left university studying something completely different, and got in touch with the CEO of Junk Kouture, offered me a job, and 3 years later, I've never left, and it was just a crazy experience and something I'm so grateful for. And I get to then share my story with future students at Junk Kouture today, and it's so nice because I can relate to what they're going through.
Katie, I know you're well aware that Sustana's recycled fiber is added to all kinds of sustainable food and beverage packaging, from paper cups and carry-out containers to sandwich wraps and even microwavable sleeves. What can you tell us? What's going on in Ireland specifically, and the European Union in general, in terms of people switching from plastics to paper, especially in single-use applications?
I suppose in Europe and in Ireland specifically, we are seeing less and less single use plastic, which I think is brilliant. The trend can only continue in the right direction, fingers crossed, and we can only be hopeful. And for me, I think the biggest eye opener has been that I have not had a single use plastic straw in Europe in forever. Same thing with paper bags. Cost on paying for single use plastic bags now as well. You can't just get them for free anymore. There's a cost with them. A lot of paper bags and takeaway food and supermarket industries. And then also lots of paper packaging for products itself. So we're seeing a growth in less plastic and more paper items in antiperspirants, coffee beans. Even when you get a parcel now, instead of the bubble wrap, it's like paper filler. It's the shredded paper that they're putting in. And so the trends are definitely stepping away from plastic and moving in the right direction, which is great to see. And that's what I've been noticing the more time I spend in Europe, Greg. And definitely think there's some other parts of the world that have a lot of catching up to do for sure.
I have to say, I actually grew up in Spain. And back in Spain in the 80s, there was not a lot of plastic straws either because there was no straws, period. It's always been my argument here in the US that the best solution to single use plastic items is more like straws, right? That there's no way that you can collect and repurpose, recycle, or any other thing is, do we really need them, right? So think about it. Do we really need a straw or a lot of them, right? Probably not. Right?
That's a
So
good point, Marta. So Katie, you were at the COP27 UN Climate Change Convention last November in 2022, and Junk Kouture had a display there. Could you tell us a little bit about what the reaction was of some of the attendees at COP27 about some of Junk Couture's clothing, as well as in other events? And what do people actually how do they respond when they find out that your clothing is actually made out of recycled materials?
Yeah, so I attended COP27 with Junk Kouture, and it was with our partner Deloitte as well, as we've collaborated with them recently on several sustainability initiatives. And it was honestly an incredible few days. I went not knowing what to expect. And here I was with two Junk Kouture designs, all the way over from Egypt in my suitcase and ready to set up a stand at the Resilience Hub at COP27. So one of the designs we brought over was called VIP. Any guesses what it's made from?
Wow.
No? VIP.
vegetable
Yes,
something.
pea
Okay.
pods. There we go.
The
So
what?
these pea pods, the pea pods?
Oh, yes.
So
Yes.
these students had collected them from local restaurants. So the pea pods that aren't used in cooking, they were dried out and used in the creation of their design with also vegetable netting. So it was an incredible design, the contrast of the green and the orange in the netting. And then we also brought over a design called Netiquette, and that was made from plastic single use laundry bags and some scrap fringing from laundrettes as well that they had as well. So it was a beautiful design, and the two of them were brought over and displayed on mannequins. And on the reaction side, Greg, when people look at it and they see couture, the last thing they think is that it's made from junk as well. And people are truly amazed. And to top it off, then when you tell them it's created by students, they can't believe it. And they're full of questions like, what is this? Oh my God. Because they're so beautiful. And especially when, you go to a Junk Kouture event and you see them on stage, it's very different getting to see them on a mannequin than up close and personal. And you see the detail and you can see the material. And it's just like, whoa, this is incredible what these students are doing.
Let's talk about materials for a moment or two, about some of the recycled materials you use at Junk Kouture, specifically paper.
Yeah, recycled paper as a textile for students getting involved in Junk Kouture is definitely in our top three most used materials every single year. We've been in Ireland for 12 years, as I mentioned, and still to this day, even launching in new countries, it's still a top three material to use at Junk Kouture. And, I think it's because that there's not only so many different forms of paper products around us, but so many ways that the material can be manipulated and transformed to create different textures, patterns, shapes. And that's what I love when I see students working with paper, because never two dresses or designs look the same, which is great. And when it comes to the types they use, we've seen everything from food packaging, newspapers, cardboard, school textbooks. Students get really creative when it comes to seeing what they have around them, and they get creative with dyeing the paper as well, which I love to see. So we've seen students dyeing it with turmeric, with coffee grounds as well. We've seen them using beetroot. I've seen stamps with beetroot that they've dyed, boiled in water, and used that as a dye for paper. And then, like I said, different techniques that they've been showing us, like weaving with paper as well, and crunching it up and using other materials like wire hangers and maybe some sort of plastic that they're melting in between the paper. So it's connecting the paper together by melting plastic with their designs.
Talking about recycled materials, Katie, I know, this time of year, the new year, a lot of people have resolutions, and one of them usually is to, clean out, reorganize their households and whatnot. And I've seen in the website onegreenplanet.org, they said that only about 15.3% of clothing is recycled compared to, say, paper products, which is at about almost 68% now. Are there any types of programs that Junk Kouture is involved in terms of reclaiming and repurposing worn or used clothing that you can in turn recycle and upcycle into new designs?
Yeah, so I suppose going to your statistic first, Greg, it's quite similar here in the UK and Ireland, with around 10% of clothing being recycled, which is seriously low. But one of the organizations that we work closely with at Junk Kouture is a company called NCBI. It's a charity, apologies. And we do, what we do with them is we organize school trips for students to visit the NCBI warehouse. And at the NCBI warehouse, that is where they bring all the bags of clothes that are donated, and that they get their hands dirty. The students get in amongst the bags, and they are involved in the sorting and selecting of the garments that have to go back to the charity shops for consumers to buy again. We have to, start looking at the consumer, making them more aware, getting them to choose to reuse and recycle rather than throw away fashion or buy more. And that will help us get closer to the goal of reducing the environmental impact of the fashion industry, I think.
Well, Katie, as we wrap up our conversation with you today, I just wanted to ask you, both personally and professionally, what do you do on a daily basis to help our environment?
So for me personally, I think it's things like always carrying around a water bottle that can be refilled at water stations. They are popping up everywhere now. I think that's the most simplest thing people can do. A tote bag in my handbag, always, just in case I do pick up some groceries or whatnot, saves me having to last minute buy one of those plastic bags. And that to me, I suppose, with water and plastic bags, although I find them so easy to incorporate into my other life, I still can't fathom that other people can't do it in theirs. And then I suppose the biggest change for me was, and to Marta's point about fashion and buying fashion, I also wasn't the best. Was I asking myself simple questions when I was buying? Is this my fashion, or is this a trend? Is this my own personal style, or is this a trend that I'm following? And will I wear this a minimum of 30 times? And that's something I ask myself every time I do shop now. It's asking these people, do you need that? And if you are going to buy it, will you wear it a minimum of 30 times to make sure you're extending the life cycle of that garment, and it's not going to sit in the back of your closet, and it's not going to then subsequently end up in landfill.
Katie, it's been a really a pleasure speaking with you today. We're so excited about all the wonderful work you're doing on behalf of students as well as the environment with Junk Kouture, and we wish you continued success on the fashion front in 2023.
Oh, thank you so much, Greg. It was a pleasure speaking to both you and Marta, and loved all your questions, and I hope your audience enjoy it too. Thank you so much again for having me and having Junk Kouture.
Join us next month for a new edition of Pulp Nonfiction, the paper and packaging podcast, and be sure to visit sustanafiber.com for previous podcasts, as well as for more information on all our recycled fiber products for your sustainable packaging needs. Thanks again. Remember to recycle, and we'll see you again soon.